What's up guys? Welcome back to Vanover Customs, and in today's video we're continuing on with this massive Lion lathe rebuild restoration project. In the last couple videos you saw us doing some scraping on the compound, cross slide, apron. Today we're going to jump right into disassembling the apron, so let's get right into it. All right, guys, you've seen that montage of me taking all these parts out, and I just want to address kind of why we're doing this. I think it's pretty important. So originally I wasn't going to get into this because I wasn't going to take off the top of the apron, and it would have been fine. The wear on this machine is very minimal. There's no issues in here. There's no real reason to take it apart. However, since we did take off the top of the apron, I wanted to get in here mainly because since we're going to paint this, we have to remove the shaft so we can paint behind there. And the real thing is, if we're coming this far, I just want to be able to come in here and get all this sludge out of here, get everything cleaned up. We'll throw a coat of, we'll take the chip paint off and repaint it with some enamel paint. But really, we just want to make sure everything goes back together clean, and that everything works, and if there are any bushings that are worn out or anything like that, that we address it. So based on what I'm seeing so far, everything here is a bearing, and I've spun a bunch of them on the bench. They seem fine. That's in line with what I would have thought. We'll be able to inspect the actual split nuts. I'm sure they're fine, but we'll be able to inspect that. We'll get this cleaned out and just make sure everything is nice and clean. So when it comes back together, it looks good, but most importantly, everything is clean. We know that the oil going into it is good, and everything checks out. We have an oil pickup over here for our pump, and you wouldn't think that stuff like this is important, but it really is, right? When you have all this sludge in here, it's just gonna get the pump clogged. It's not gonna lubricate everything. So this is one of those scenarios where even though we're not really doing any crazy machining or crazy rebuilding, it is an important part of the step just to make sure that we're starting from ground zero in terms of cleanliness and in terms of operation. It's worked well this far. It's been about 40 years, and you can see it's not too dirty compared to some of the other equipment that I've done. So putting it back together after cleaning it should be good for another 20, 30 years. I want to go ahead and get this apron fully removed, but the apron is captured by these 3 rods coming through the bottom or the back. So what we need to do is come around to the back, remove the end cap, and then go ahead and remove the roll pins over here so we can slide these shafts out, and then we can go ahead and get this off and get it over to the bench. This took me a minute to figure out what's going on in here because it's a little bit unusual. So initially I thought maybe this was driving the coolant pump, even though the coolant pump is a separate motor. But then what I realized is there's a motor in there. And when I thought about it for a second, this motor powers this shaft, and what this does is it operates the power rapid traverse. So if you see on these newer models, the motor is actually mounted onto the carriage, but on these models, the motor is over here and it runs a shaft. So just a little bit of a different design. It's not something I've seen. I would say it's not super common, but now that we know what it is, it's not really any big deal. So all our goal here is just to get this end cap off so we can pull the shafts out. So the motor and all that will probably stay, seem to be working fine. So we'll take this cap off just so we can see what's going on and get this guy off, and then we'll get the shafts out. Move this screw here. Got a spring there, and then this idler pushes down, and we should be able to get the chain off. Actually, it'd be easier to get it off on the small side. There it is. All right, finally we got this gear off and everything turned out good. We were fighting it, but we did get it off. So now we can pull this piece off. We got the apron taken apart, and over here on the bench, we got the front pulled off. I went ahead and removed all 3 screws and shafts and put them over there in the shop. And then we have the coolant pump and the rapid traverse motor and a bunch of the parts up here on the bench. And it's starting to get crowded, and we're getting ready to kind of dive into these parts and start seeing where we're at and see what the next step is. We went ahead and got this apron fully stripped down, and it is a lot of work, but I think it will be worth it. We came in here with a needle scaler, cleaned up the inside just to get us down to raw casting, and then did that on the back and on the cover. The benefit in doing that is when we go to paint this, we'll have really good surface adhesion, and that's important because this is going to be living in an oil bath. Now we could have just rolled with the factory paint, however it was chipping and flaking, and because we have an oil system in here, I really don't want that paint chipping, falling into the bottom and getting caught in our sump. So really happy to do that. The other benefit in tearing it down this far is we can replace the bearings and inspect for wear and do what we need to do. Taking something down this far is a little bit daunting, and it is even for me, even though I've done this several times, because you have to get it back 100% how it was or you're going to have issues. So it's always wise to take photos, videos, and even then expect mistakes on reassembly. But we're going to do everything we can to keep it running smooth and to allow us to get the best possible result. We do have a little bit less bearings than we did have in the gearbox, so we're gonna go ahead and get those ordered. We have some snap rings we gotta get ordered, and then I noticed that we had a lip or cup seal in the back that was completely missing. It was like slid out of its housing, so any oil in there would have just fallen out, and obviously this one is trashed. So we get a chance to replace those, which is really nice. And then on all of these gears, they all have bronze bushings, and they're all pretty loose. Not the worst I've seen, but definitely beyond acceptable. So we're gonna be machining some bronze bushings, and they have some oil grooves in there, so a little bit more complicated than our standard bushings, but that'll just be some fun for us later. The other thing we went ahead and did is off camera, went ahead and drilled and tapped that hole for our oil sights. We've been doing that on this entire machine. I did find out just yesterday that the oil sights are available from Johnny at International Machine. I did have a hard time locating them. They would have been available. However, the ones that he has for replacement are plastic like the original, and the ones that I'm gonna be installing are metal with a glass cover and are readily available here in the US because they're a stock item. So that is the last oil sight that we needed to drill and tap, so we're good there. Other than that, we're just gonna move these off to the side. I would love to get these guys powder coated, mostly for the sides and front, mostly for durability and visual, and then we'll paint the inside, but that's gonna be dependent on costs. So for now, we'll just set it to the side until that time comes, and then we'll make a list of all the parts we need and get those ordered, and then we'll get moving on to the next step.